This week on Engage the Sage.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. Welcome to this week's episode of Engage the Sage. This week, I'm going to give you some tips for navigating your emails. If you're like me, you get literally hundreds of emails a day. I'm probably going to get 50 while filming this video. This can be overwhelming because everyone wants information, everyone's got a question, everyone wants a response. If I let it, I can give my entire day to email. I would rather not give my entire day to email because I have a lot of other personal and professional responsibilities that are going to deserve my time. I have to do the things to get the information for the emails, for instance. So I'm going to try to do some strategies for myself to make emails less daunting. Now, spoiler alert, I'm not going to be able to tell you how to get fewer emails, but I am going to give you some tips to make those emails when they come in a little bit easier to handle. My first recommendation for navigating your emails is to teach your students patience for your emails. We live in a time where people expect immediate feedback. I know I'm guilty of expecting immediate feedback sometimes, but especially with emails in an academic environment, this is simply not sustainable. In my classes, I try to give my students some expectations about when they can expect responses from me. For instance, I'll let them know if you send me an email, it might be 24 or 48 hours before I respond. And if you don't get a response within 24 to 48 hours, you can send me that email again, but don't remind me before that time span has elapsed. I recommend, if you want to have a policy like this, to let your students know this. You might even want to include it as a syllabus statement. Let them know it's not because you don't care about their messages and it's not because you're rude. Is because you're busy and because you have other responsibilities. And remind them they also have other responsibilities. So it's not that you're rude, it's just that you're human. My second recommendation for navigating your emails is to have a procedure and policy for emails in your class. What I mean by this is in my classes, I actually have a policy for how I would like my students to craft their emails. And we have a video talking about this policy. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. And consider, because I do this with my classes, I have my students watch that video to learn how I would like them to craft emails to me. Couple things from that video. I'm going to want my students to tell me what class they're in. I want them to use my name. I want them to use their name. And I want them to ask me a question. That way I know how to respond to them. And I've found that simply having that instruction to have my students ask a question in the email to let me know how to respond really saves me some time in trying to figure out what I should do in that responding email. I think sometimes we assume that our students will know how to send an email. I don't assume my students know how to do really anything that I haven't taught them to do. So having just a little bit of guidance about how emails in my class are expected to work, I've found to be really helpful. My third recommendation for navigating your email is to have an email schedule. What I mean by having an email schedule is to decide in your day when you're actually going to dedicate some time to handling those emails. And the answer should not be all the time. I think the impulse for a lot of us is to answer emails as soon as we get to the office. As soon as we turn on that laptop in the morning, we see the inbox and we start to send out responses to all those emails that we've gotten. Now, this may work for you. It's actually not the best choice for me, though, because I'm actually a morning person. I like to get up. I have a lot of energy. I don't even do the coffee thing. But when I get to my office, that's when I have my most energy and my most motivation to get some things done. So if I waste that kind of high cognitive time for me on low cognitive tasks, things like emails that don't take as much attention or cognitive ability as, say, writing, and you should be writing, then I will have wasted my most energetic time of the day. So when you're setting your email schedule, think about times that are not going to conflict with your highest productivity times. Use those for your high cog actions. Use those for the things that you really have to spend a lot of attention to, and find other pockets of time, maybe even smaller pockets of time between meetings or between classes, to send some of those emails. My fourth recommendation for navigating your emails is to create email templates. By having email templates, I'm thinking about anticipating the kinds of emails that I'm going to get from people. So I might find that I'm going to have students saying, hey, I'm going to miss class next Tuesday. I might have prospective graduate students email me saying, hey, are you looking for a doctoral student to start next year? In those situations, what I might do is actually in a Word document, draft out the template for my response. And in that response, I'm going to leave some areas for personalization. But in that maybe paragraph long email or 3 sentence email, there might only be 1 sentence that I have to change out depending on that specific student who messaged me. For instance, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, I would have an email that I would send to my students who are in quarantine or isolation, telling them about what my expectations were. And spoiler alert, my expectation number one is focus on your health, but kind of what my expectations were for when they were well enough to come back to my class. Now, these templates do take a little bit of personalization when we send them out, but it definitely saves me some time when I have 200 students in a class and several of them every week are telling me they're going to miss. My fifth recommendation for navigating your emails is to draft an email now, but send it later. The email system that my university uses actually allows for us to schedule send. And what that means is that I can draft the email now, but I can decide to send it tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So doing some of these kind of things allows you to decide when that email will go out. In the meantime, that email is actually saved as a draft, so I can edit it if I would like along the way prior to the schedule sending time. Prior to someone telling me about this option, what I would do is save my emails as drafts until I wanted to manually send them myself. Part of the reason that I use schedule send is because I don't necessarily want to set up an expectation that I'm going to reply immediately. So for instance, if my student Noah sends me an email, I might draft that response immediately. But I might not want to send that email immediately so that Noah thinks he's always going to get an immediate response. My sixth recommendation for navigating your email is to give yourself some time to decide how to reply to emails, especially if they're going to be emotional or be related to something that you're going to have a hard time figuring out right away. One of the things that I teach my students is the more we feel, the less we think. If I get an email that arouses kind of an emotional reaction, if I have an email that I want to have, a very impulsive or even aggressive response, it's time for me to wait a minute before I send that email. So when you get that email that you say, oh my God, why would the student do that? I have to tell them right away that they're wrong. That's probably not the right response. And you might want to delay just a little bit in responding to that message. A measured response is always better than an impulsive response. And it's taken me some time to learn this. But thinking it through and getting it right is always better than doing it fast. When I get an email that kind of prompts this kind of impulsive emotional reaction, it's important for me to stop and to think about what my course policies are, or the policies of my university are, or to maybe debrief with a colleague or something like that, to make sure that what I eventually tell the student or the colleague is what I wanted them to hear. It's also important to understand that sometimes that response is, hey, we got to set up a meeting to talk about this, because I do think that sometimes those email conversations convey things that would be a lot easier to convey in a face-to-face setting or even a Zoom setting. The last thing that I want to do is to get in a volley where me and someone else are sending each other 5-page long emails back and forth and just talking past each other. Sometimes it's better to use that email to set up another way to communicate. My seventh recommendation for navigating your email is to realize that, the title of this video is not so fast in those emails, and I've kind of preached some patience and taking your time, is to also understand, though, that sometimes emergencies and crises do require immediate attention and responses. I've been preaching patience. I've been discussing delay. Sometimes you simply don't have that luxury. Sometimes an email will come to you that you have to deal with right away. So knowing when that's the case is something you have to do. You have to kind of come up with for yourself some sort of triage system to say, this one I have to attend to right now. If you're going to make an error on this, treating that email as an emergency when it's not is probably a better mistake to make than to treat it as something that you can wait on when you can't. Emails are fun. We get a lot of them. I've gotten a lot while filming this video. You probably got several while watching this video. But I hope that some of the recommendations that I provided for you will help you navigate emails, because I don't think they're going away, but maybe, just maybe, they can be a little bit less overwhelming. I'm also sure that some of the recommendations that I've made won't work for you. And in the comments below, I would love to hear the recommendations that you have and the strategies that you use for navigating your email. Thank you for watching this episode of Engage the Sage. Please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, share us on social media, and we'll see you next time on Engage the Sage.